The digital era really introduces a paradigm of acceleration. And so before, organizations were really able to take some time in thinking about how it is that they plan their next move. What we're now finding in the digital era is that the pace and acceleration is at an unprecedented level. In many instances, it's a case of days that they need to consider how to respond, they need to consider what to do, and they need to empower the organization to execute in a prompt but appropriate manner. There's a few considerations you need to think about when looking at this whole balancing act. The first is that the strategy has to be the right strategy. You have to think about the right plan at that particular point in time. And if you take too long to get that right, you ultimately become a laggard in the market and everybody moves ahead of you. So that becomes critically important to do the right thing at the right time. In addition to that, the organization needs to respond by executing in the most appropriate way. Whilst there needs to be a tolerance for learning and failure and making sure that there's a constant progression, that timeline and that urgency has to become a lot better. You now have to be very responsive and very agile in that whole approach. Becoming more agile and making sure that you integrate your planning and your execution process doesn't just have the advantage of allowing you to be more relevant and get to market quicker. What it actually does is it highlights the fact that your organization is working in a different way. It highlights the fact that your workforce are more empowered. It shows that the organization is solving problems and learning in a far more appropriate manner. But more importantly, it shows a level of cohesion and integration in terms of how the organization is coming together to make sure that it can ultimately respond in the way that needs to happen. And if you're able to integrate your planning and your execution, it's indicative of the fact that your people are inevitably engaging in a different way. And that's a huge benefit. When you have a look at the report, what it did highlight for me is really two very specific stories. On the one hand, there's a lot of focus being placed on execution for the purpose of customer and operational efficiency. However, what it did also highlight is that there are still isolations or segregations in the organization where this whole concept of execution and planning as an integrated way of working is still not touching every area of the business. And so successful digital organizations really remove those silos and boundaries and make sure that it's the mandate of every person to play a role in verifying what we do and ultimately how we go about doing it. And what's critically important is that feedback loop. Let's make sure that as we get more information about what's happening in the market, what our customers want, that we inevitably bring that back into the organization so that we can potentially adjust or even correct the actions that we take. So please look through the report, connect with us. We'd love to hear from you in terms of what's working and what's not working. Getting that balance between planning and execution and making sure that the organization is involved in the right way is something that we can all talk about and work together to improve.